Okay, great. So I am your professor, teacher, Mr. Bovee. I don't quite know what you all call him. To me, he's dad. I'm his son. So he's probably told you that I'm going to be appearing here to help you learn how to use artificial intelligence, specifically large language models. It doesn't really matter necessarily, unless you're interested in computer science, what the actual technical terms are here. Um, Basically, what you need to know is that artificial intelligence is useful in your research. I have learned this, and I have been able to very quickly become somewhat of an expert on a couple different technologies that I previously had no experience in. So much so that now I'm leading research on waste and recycling for things like batteries and textiles, like the shirts we're wearing now, plastic bottles, pretty much anything you can think of that you can take value out of, I do research on. And why is research important? Well, you're going to have to do it regardless of what you go into. Even if you're going to be a garbage man, you're going to have to know what you're handling, how you're handling it. And a quick search on ChatGPT, which is one of the large language or AI models we're going to be talking about, can tell you some of that. Company handbooks could too. One of the cool things you can do with some of these models is download a company handbook and make it read it for you. The key concept here is not so that you can work less hard, or your life will necessarily be easier. It's just that you will be more productive. So uh, don't call me a mood killer, but I'm not going to save you necessarily hard work. What I'm going to do is show you a way that you can improve your thinking and go from spending 10 hours writing a paper to maybe two. And we'll talk about kind of what that looks like and what the steps are. Obviously, my work is going to be quite different from your work. I did major in history, something not so different than what you're studying now, but I now work in technology and business. So the skills are very transferable. If I had something like this when I was in college, which is not actually that long ago, I would have used it quite a lot. So telling you all this now to say that the tools you're about to learn are transferable across any subject, and they're going to be very useful for the rest of your life until we get some type of implant in our brain that does all the research for us. But I think you and I are quite some time away. And yeah, so let's talk about kind of what we're working with now. And just as a preface, there are lots of models to use. Google has something called Gemini, Facebook has something called Llama. Um, I prefer two specific ones. One you've probably heard of, one you probably haven't. There's also Claude is a pretty good one too, not to cut myself off. Uh, I prefer to use ChatGPT for very basic questions, oftentimes just for my personal research, or say if I'm planning a vacation for my family or my girlfriend and I, something like that. Being able to know kind of what there is to do in, say, downtown San Diego, or what beaches are the best for surfing in San Diego. If you can't tell, that's where I live. And I don't know everything, so ChatGPT knows a lot more than I do. Let's use it. The other model I use is Perplexity. It's quite specific and it's quite academically oriented, but there are other features that even I haven't used. And I'm somebody who spends a lot of my waking time on these large language models because they make my job easier, and anything easier is better. Um, so Perplexity, again, you probably have not heard of. I prefer it, but mostly because it gives me sources, which you have to use too. So if I were to recommend one of the two, that's the one I would recommend. But both are good, and both you should and probably will use. I would recommend at least testing them out. So let's go ahead, and I have a little presentation for you all. You should feel very special. And we'll talk about kind of what this looks like. So you, AI, and research. What does it have to do with you, and why is it important? I don't have any statistics that in 5 years there will be no more books being used in classrooms. I don't have any statistics of if you don't learn how to use AI in 5 years, you'll make $100,000 less per year. I don't have the statistics for you. What I do have is my general feeling, having been in your shoes about 3 to 4 years ago. I didn't have this. I wish I had this. It would have made my life a whole lot easier, and I probably could have finished school in half the time. Again, the basic premise here is not that you'll have to work less hard, it's that it'll give you more time to work on other things. So if you want to start a side business while you're doing it, you can even use AI for that. But the idea is you have to spend less time writing Mr. Bovee or Professor Bovee's papers. That's not me, that's my dad again. And you can spend more time on the things you like. And you can even use artificial intelligence doing it, playing video games, starting a business, hanging out with friends and family. Spend your time doing that now. As you get older, you get less time to do that. But let's talk about this. Artificial intelligence. I'm not going to try to read too much off this, but it is the most important concept and tool that anybody can learn today. All you need is a phone, a computer, a web signal, some data, and maybe an email. Some of these tools don't even require you to have an email. How simple is that? Eventually, you probably will have to register an email, though, if you use it a lot. So lots of different forms. Like I said, the technical terms here really aren't important. The key one is for this class, in research, AI is the most powerful and specific version of Google that you can imagine. All of you use Google for your papers. I know I did. But let's, move away from that. We can use a better tool now. So what is the whole concept here? Instead of spending hours reading books from the library or searching the web, typing in, how can we reduce California wildfires? You don't have to do that anymore. What you can do is use AI, ask these questions. It'll give you sources to work with. You can, use them yourself. You don't have to click through 20 different links. You can maybe click through 3. That right there is minus 17 in terms of the amount of links you have to click. Do the math. It's a lot more efficient. You get more valuable information from these things quicker. So you go from having to, and it can also help you draft outlines. We'll talk more about that. You go from having to spend hours looking just for links or books or writing outlines to maybe, seconds, minutes, 10, 15 minutes. You can do all this. It's probably going to take you longer than that, but if you're really efficient, who knows? It can also take really complex topics. I majored in history. Does it look like I know a ton about batteries? Batteries are super complex. They have things like nickel and manganese and cobalt and lithium and iron and phosphate. I couldn't tell you where those are on the periodic table. I wasn't very good at chemistry, but what I can tell you is that AI helped me learn a lot of these concepts faster, and it helped cut out a lot of the things I didn't need. I didn't have to go to school and major in chemistry and figure out where all these things were on the periodic table. I can use AI to cut through all of that fat. It's a good way to think about it, and really get to the heart of the matter, what I really need to know for what my job is asking me to do. And just for a reference, what I mainly do is I work on researching waste and recycling technologies, what startups are doing, and who they are kind of trying to help. So the big waste management companies like WM or Republic Services, next time you see a garbage truck, it'll probably be one of those two. Who are they most likely to buy out? What company are they going to spend $100 million acquiring because they handle waste better than anybody else on the planet? And why do they do that? How is this technology so innovative? That's what I spend my time doing. I don't work for any of these companies, but I want to understand what they understand, and I want to do it quickly. That's why I use AI. So to use AI, we'll go through a little mock exercise of this, but you visit one of these websites. These are the 2 I recommend. You may or may not have to make an account. You can just download the app on your phone. So there really is no excuse to not use these. ChatGPT is broader. They're making the tool a lot better recently. Sometimes it has sourcing now. So if you look up, what is President John F. Kennedy's most famous speech? It might give you a link to a YouTube video or the transcription, basically what he said online. It'll give you that exact link. That's a source. Perplexity is better known for doing that. That's why I prefer it. Gives you better answers, in my opinion, and they'll source them in like kind of a footnote style. So say 1, 2, 3, 4, and all of those will be going to a link. A word for the wise here. Sometimes these websites hallucinate and they generate academic articles or kind of journalism that hasn't actually been created. Does this make these sites unreliable? No, but it means that you have to spend more time and kind of focus a bit more on really scrolling through, testing all the sites. If you want to use some information you find on there, click the link or Google it if it doesn't have a link, and make sure that it's real. That's all that that means. But these are still exceptionally helpful tools. So from there, you're going to go ahead and ask questions in the text box these provide. The left is ChatGPT. It even gives you some questions to kind of generate some ideas. On the right is Perplexity, does the same thing. The very cool thing about these apps or programs is that once you ask a question, we'll get into a specific example later, but this is the one we're going to touch on. What is so important about battery recycling and how can it improve how we can build electric vehicles? That may not mean a ton to you now, but it will in a second. You would simply type this into this chat box here. It would feed you out an answer, and then it'll suggest a couple more questions you can ask. What I would do if you're just using these for the first time is just go on a little wild goose chase with some of these questions. Just play around with them. They'll give you follow-up questions. Just click on that, see where you go. Pick up some information, especially when you're just starting one of these assignments. I have the list of all the questions and all the prompts that you're being asked, and there's 25 of them, if I remember correctly. So what I would really suggest is just throw one of these questions in this box. See where it takes you. For example, how can we effectively help the homeless? Type that in, see where it takes you. Maybe we'll try that in a little bit, but let's get a little more familiar. So first, how do you use AI in your context? So I've separated it into 4 steps. We're going to revisit this outline in a little bit, but number 1 is just understand the basic question. So, for example, how can we effectively help the homeless? A good place to start is really just asking, how can we help the homeless? In this, understand the basic question. You can also kind of explore, what are the homeless populations in every state in the nation? Or what are the biggest homeless populations in the country? What are the 5 states with the most homeless population? That kind of gets you into the second part. The first part, you really just want to understand what the question is. What are the causes of homelessness? Who is generally homeless? What is the age group who's homeless? Then you get into facts, papers, sources, and citations. Once you kind of have an understanding of what are the basic strategies maybe to help homeless people, you start blending it. What are the facts and papers that support your ideas? You can think of this as kind of a hypothesis, if you're familiar with that word. Basically, in the understand the basic question part, the first part of this, how to use AI, you're really trying to generate what are the strategies, and you can do this, or sometimes the AI model will do this for you. What are some of the strategies we can use to help fight homelessness or help end homelessness? And maybe it says, shelters are a good idea, or drug programs are a good idea, something like this. You then take that and you type in, what are some of the basic statistics around how drug programs help reduce homelessness? You gather a couple arguments, say you do that 4 or 5 times, and you have 5 really strong arguments that you feel in ways that drug programs help reduce homelessness. Then you ask the model, help me draft an outline that touches on these specific facts about drug programs and how they help end homelessness effectively. It'll draft an outline for you, and this is the part where you come in. Instead of having to do what I did, where I had to pour through books and websites and professors and all of these resources to understand just those first 2 parts, and then I had to spend hours and hours and hours drafting an outline. All you really have to do outside of your paper or outside of your phone or your computer is then write a paper. And this is the important part, and this is the part that Professor Bovee will probably be more harsh on. Now that you have all this extra time, you shouldn't have typos. You shouldn't have commas in the wrong place. You should really be writing your paper, rereading it, and making sure it makes sense. You shouldn't have sentences that go to nowhere, otherwise known as run-on sentences. Be clear. Really use language that's very simple, get to the point. The fewer words you can use, oftentimes the clearer it is. You don't need to use complicated words to say that drug programs, let's say, help reduce homelessness by 25% in all the people who attend them. Just be very direct and then reread, edit, edit, edit. That is the process of being a good writer. Trust me, pretty much everybody in our family, ask my dad, really is. We published papers, we've written quite a lot. 4 of the 5 of us were all in school for writing, basically, politics and history, etc. And then the really cool thing is, once you think your paper makes a lot of logical sense, you can put it into AI programs. Perplexity is one. Professor Bovee will share another one that helps edit your writing for typos or grammar, where commas should be, where they shouldn't be. Excuse me. And logical flow, some of these. Some of them might say, this doesn't fit with the rest of this argument or this paragraph or this sentence. You should put it somewhere else or delete it. You should learn from this specific editing program how to edit your own papers, because this is going to be the really important part. The easier it is for someone to understand your writing or your speaking, the 2 are really linked. This is just giving some wisdom out. The easier it will be for you to convince people of things. So this is the structure. Ask a basic question. What are the problems that cause homelessness in California? Where are the homeless populations in California? Where are the homeless populations in America? find some facts and papers and sources to cite kind of the ideas that you have around what might help. So you can ask here, what are some of the solutions that help end homelessness in California, in Sacramento, in San Diego? And then from there, you generate, well, drug programs seem to help. What are the benefits of drug programs in San Diego homelessness? You find facts, you find papers, you find sources. Then you use all those and you say, well, I have all these statistics now. How can I draft this paper? I want to touch on drug programs in San Diego, Sacramento, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. You then ask this AI model, draft an outline for how drug programs can help end homelessness in San Diego, Sacramento, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Use those as the primary examples and find ways to extend it outside of those cities. It'll draft you up something. You can then use the statistics from the second part to make your argument in this outline and nuance it. Write your paper using both the outline and those statistics. Fill in the gaps of the outline with those statistics. Write your paper and then edit it, edit it, edit it. And then finally, when you're getting near done, put it into an AI model and help your paper along. So now I'm going to kind of blend what we just talked about. How do I use AI and how can you use it? So I'm going to use battery recycling, as I said. This is a question that I spent about 4 months on. I ended up getting a lot of publicity out of it. It was very well received. I've been published in several different journals and newspapers online. I've done speaking events for it. It was a really well received paper. And who do I owe it to? Well, believe it or not, I really didn't talk to that many people over the phone or in person. I just used what was out there online. This can include podcasts. This can include YouTube videos. This can include writings that the companies, startups, and otherwise, like large corporates, put out. I really just digested all the information available online, and then I kind of added to that with interviews or calling people on the phone, etc. So all of my projects, I research a topic I don't personally have a background in. I understand why it's important economically, environmentally. Batteries are really toxic, actually. And not only that, there actually is some child slavery and regular slavery that goes into making a battery in the modern day. Beyond that, there's some really bad environmental consequences. Not lead, excuse me, water poisoning and pollution, air poisoning and pollution. The list is pretty extensive. So the primary idea from there is, what are the benefits that can help reduce some of that environmental issue? There's also economic issues. China dominates the EV manufacturing industry. That's not good if you're Tesla and you want to build an EV manufacturing industry in America. So what are the economic issues that we can help solve with battery recycling? Then it kind of comes from, where is the innovation? What is the technology in battery recycling? What are the kind of up and comers? What are the ones that have been here for a while? And then I kind of try to predict the future. The last question on this first bullet point is really mostly me. The models are good at predicting things, but they're not perfect. And once you kind of become the expert, you can lead the model, but you have to make your own decisions. This isn't going to write your paper for you. It's going to be really clear if it did write your paper for you. There's not going to be that human voice. And it's also just going to be copy and paste. There's also pretty easy ways to detect it. So don't have it write your paper. You should write the paper. It'll just do all the background for you, and you'll be learning alongside it. So we can really start with this general question. What are the benefits of recycling electric vehicle batteries? We can then move on to kind of that multi-step approach I just gave you. Ask it some basic background questions. These are mainly for you. They're not necessarily going to appear in your paper, because by then you'll be the expert when you're writing it. What are the core technologies in battery recycling? I came to learn there's a couple. They have very complicated names: hydrometallurgy, pyrometallurgy, direct recycling. What that basically boils down to is a water treatment, a heat treatment, or just a general chemical treatment. How does battery recycling's environmental impact compared to mining? Well, it's pretty major. 30% reductions in CO2 emissions, major reductions in water use, etc. That kind of gives you a general idea. Okay, well, there are environmental benefits here. And then you can kind of explore it further. You can say, well, what are some of the human benefits? Whose lives would be improved here? Well, that one's kind of hard to answer. And that's kind of difficult, because in America, you could say, well, you're getting some pretty interesting benefits. They're getting more jobs, but is that hurting people in China? That's kind of where you move on to the specific questions. Don't be afraid to ask for more information here. So when you say, what are the economic benefits from mining? You might get a question that says, Well, for America, it creates jobs that previously we didn't have because we don't have much mining or refining. Then you can ask, well, who does this hurt? Are the people in the Congo who currently mine it going to be hurt? What is their situation? What are their political situations? You can ask questions like, what are the benefits? You can literally just ask the core question back to it. Like I said, this is a good time to ask literally the question that you're answering from your prompt. You can also say, who are the industries that are involved? Why are they involved? What do they benefit from it? Is Ford interested? They don't make electric vehicles, but are they interested? You just ask these questions. Never be afraid to ask for more information. As I said earlier, the AI prompt will even generate new questions for you. When you do think you have enough material, and now you have a kind of hypothesis, you think, well, EV battery recycling is good because it provides domestic, otherwise saying America doesn't have to import or buy EV materials from China or Japan or Korea or Congo. You can then use your hypothesis and draft an outline. You have all these sources. You can use the sources when you start writing and you have that outline. So you say, you ask Perplexity, you say, draft an outline that will help me write a 3-page paper. This is the final bullet point on the benefits of battery recycling. Split the paper into an introduction, 3 core arguments, and a conclusion. Right there, you've created 5 paragraphs. My 3 core arguments are that battery recycling reduces carbon emissions, it reduces child labor in the Congo, and it creates jobs in America. That is really as simple as you can get it. It will then probably give you more sources that you can use. But that is really as simple as you can get it. Kind of moving on from here, this is what it's going to look like when you start writing. So what are some of the questions you can use? I've just given you the outline question, but what are some of the basic questions that we can use from earlier? So I've split it. There's 5 main question categories, as I'm sure you all learned in 4th or 3rd grade, or whenever that was. Who, what, when, where, why, and how questions. So here's a couple examples. What is gun violence? Pretty simple question. Maybe the model will have an interesting response. Where is it most frequent? What are the current laws? Interesting questions. What is the current crime rate in California? And is it increasing? I doubt that you know this statistic off the top of your head, so why not ask a model that has access to the entire internet? Where are wildfires taking place in California? Again, I doubt you have all of the information here, even if you do work in fire services. Is artificial intelligence dangerous? Now, this is a pretty broad question. You'd be surprised by how specific AI models can get here. Once you kind of have this is good to help you generate an argument. This is something I'll cue you into now. All of politics, all of history, anything outside of really hard science, so think basic kind of maths related fields, even computer science, a lot of stuff is just an argument. You have to convince people that you are right. And if you don't have an opinion on something, brainstorming through AI can be a good thing. So then you move on to the why and how questions. These are more complicated, more nuanced, more specific in some ways, and they'll get you kind of to a point where you can take your argument that you've just now found and try to find reasons to support it. So you're interested in gun violence. Why have laws that have been passed not reduced gun violence? You could even say, what have been the outcomes of some of these laws specifically? Has gun ownership declined, increased? What have the types of guns been purchased, changed? Are they more assault weapons? Are they more pistols? What are the kind of specifics here? You can keep getting specific. How do criminals or minors get guns? Is it legal? And what can be done to stop it? Again, now you're kind of asking it to do a couple things, and this is not a bad thing either. You're asking it, how do these people get guns? Is this even legal? Where is it legal? It might differ state to state, country to country. And what are some of the ideas to stop it? This is the beautiful thing of once you get onto a core argument, you wanted to know what gun violence was. Well, now you have an answer. Maybe it's committed by criminals and minors. How do they get these guns? You keep asking questions from that original question. It's very much kind of like a tree. It grows out from its roots up into a trunk and out to the leaves. You have to keep asking it questions and feeding it questions. What is the current crime rate in California, and is it increasing? This can be used for both. And the beautiful thing is, once you've asked this question, you can come back and use it again once you have more information. A lot of the models will even keep track of your answers and give you better answers as you keep going. That said, don't ask it 7 times in a row. What is the current crime rate in California and is it increasing? It'll probably at some point just tell you yes. So it has to kind of be nuanced. Where are the wildfires taking place in California? Is artificial intelligence dangerous? Again, a lot of these can be reused and done again. So that is the basic premise. Now, what I'm going to do is take you through one of these models, what it looks like. If I can find a way to pull it up. There we go. So this is what Perplexity looks like. This is what ChatGPT looks like. Not actually all that different, it turns out. Oh, hold on. 1 second. Let me make sure you can see my screen. Cool. There we go. So this is what ChatGPT looks like. This is what Perplexity looks like. What I'm going to give you right now, this is what's called a pro model. Currently can't use that. This is not in my account currently, but once you sign in, you have pro model. It is just a better version of this. So for example, you can say, what are some strategies to reduce homelessness, in California? The beautiful thing about Perplexity is it gives you sources, one from the government of California, one from, I assume, another California government website, one from Reddit, which I would not source, but it could be pretty interesting to read and build an opinion on. So here are some ideas. Housing first approach. California has adopted a housing first approach, which prioritizes providing stable housing before addressing other issues. This approach recognizes that services are more effective when people have secure housing. That's a solution right there that you could pursue. Is this true? Is this something that you think is useful? Maybe it's time to test it out. Increase funding and investment, specific programs, et cetera, et cetera. These are some laws. It's very good at giving you things to work with. So if you want to go a different direction, this doesn't mention much about drug use. Maybe say, okay, now you have an idea, secure housing. Okay, well, that didn't mention anything about drug use. How about drug use? So do drug programs and rehabilitation help reduce homelessness in California? Here's a really good idea. You can even say, please provide specific sources and academic papers. If you really want to sound smart for Professor Bovee, reference some academic papers. So here's a more specific answer for one of the ideas. Now you have two ideas, drug programs and secure housing. Go ahead and take this down. Here we go. A study published in the Journal of Substance Abuse Treatment found that individuals who completed substance abuse programs were more likely to be housed and employed at follow-up compared to those who did not complete treatment. That is a huge point, and that is something you can immediately use. And this is what you should do for all these sources. You should click on it, make sure it's real. Okay, it looks pretty good so far. You can do Control F. It's Control F to find some of the programs, and that's interesting. It doesn't mention anything about drug use. So in this type of situation, you'll encounter this quite a lot. You'd have to say, well, that's interesting. Maybe I won't use this source. So you go back. Okay, well, here's another one. Research in the American Journal of Public Health demonstrates that providing housing and intensive case management led to significant reductions in substance use and improvements in housing stability. Okay, well, how about you go and look at that one? Control F again. Again, nothing on drug use. So here's where you might run into an issue. What you might want to do here is go to American Journal of Public Health, copy that, open up a new tab, put that, and say homelessness drug program success. You do have to get creative. Again, this is mainly a brainstorming thing. So this is kind of where it gets a bit complicated. You would want to find something that's relatively recent, but it doesn't necessarily look like what it told us is all that accurate. So you would want to keep reading through. it really does seem like the housing first model is what they're pitching. So in a case like this, maybe your original idea of that substance abuse and drug programs were really not necessarily the right way to go. So you would then go about finding a way to change your opinion or change your thesis or your hypothesis. So maybe instead you say, please provide some academic articles analyzing housing policy to reduce homelessness. Okay, so another study from that same journal, American Journal of Public Health, found that Housing First programs decreased homelessness by 88% and improved housing stability by 41% compared to traditional treatment first approaches. So you then go here. This is the site they were talking about. And if you're just curious about that one statistic, you can literally just say 88%. And look at that. It has the exact study. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated. Some people prefer studies that were done in the last 5 to 10 years. This is from 2000, so it is older. You have to nuance that, and you have to understand that, well, this is older. Maybe say that in your paper. But this is a great example of what this looks like. Now, something that's actually unique and why you should sign up for an email is that you can click this Pro button, and it is just a better search function. You'll get more detailed and more modern research. So that's kind of what that looks like. And I'm going to stop sharing this screen now, and I'm going to move on to show you what my work actually looks like. So it's going to be quite a bit different from writing papers. I completely understand that. But this is kind of what your work in a professional context outside of school might end up looking like. So, like I said, battery recycling was kind of my jam. And to understand it, I didn't really know much about it in the beginning. So I went through, and this is eventually what it turned into. I didn't know what any of these things meant. Hydrometallurgy, pyrometallurgy, direct recycling, cold shipping, crushing, selected acid leaching. I didn't know what any of these were. But guess what? In 4 months, I learned, and I produced a pretty cool thing. This graph on the right, excuse me, nobody else in the world had released this publicly and made this public information comparing these three different types of battery recycling. I was the first one to release it publicly. So much so that actually, if you look on Perplexity and you research and ask it a question saying, please compare the recycling energy and greenhouse gas, it's an interesting way to say emissions, basically, of battery recycling technologies, it might end up citing me. So really what I'm trying to get at here is you can create really valuable information that nobody else has ever done, nobody else has ever looked at, simply because you're creating information and you're gathering together information that hasn't ever been put together before. The really beautiful thing about artificial intelligence is that you're able to accumulate information from across the web, across books, across lectures and Spotify and YouTube, podcasting, any information source you can think of, newspapers. And then you can use your mind. Every mind is unique and creative in its own way to put these things together. You can have it support hypotheses like I was wrong. The drug programs apparently aren't as successful as housing programs in homelessness reduction. Or it can back up and verify what you already think. The key idea is to be somewhere in between. Sometimes you'll be right, sometimes you'll be wrong. So, kind of getting back to the initial point we were making, I'm going to then pull up the first presentation we had up, and I'm going to share how you guys should go about writing your papers for this project. So, number one, you now know to some extent, it's now up to you to practice with it, how to use artificial intelligence. You know two really cool websites. You can even ask these tools some other websites to play with and how to use them. You can't plead ignorance with your professor, and you have me to thank for that. So file any complaints with him, and he'll bring them home to talk to me about it. This is how you're going to use it. understand the basic question. If you're talking about homelessness, ask for a definition of what homelessness is. Um, Ask for some ideas of how to fix it. You found two or three you like. Let's say drug programs, let's say housing policy, and let's say a job policy. Let's say California allocates $10 billion to provide construction jobs for homeless people. And included in that is optional drug rehabilitation and a housing facility. Then you find facts and papers and sources to kind of support, well, what is the success of using drug policy for homeless individuals? What is the success of using housing policy? What is the success of using a jobs policy? You find papers and sources and facts. You find all these things. Then you take your basic argument and you say, well, I know that all these three things are going to work. And you say, well, Perplexity, ChatGPT, draft me a couple paragraphs of an outline that say, um, how can California use drug rehabilitation programs, housing programs, and job programs to help reduce the homelessness policy or help reduce the homelessness population in California? It will give you an outline. Here's the hard part now. You have to write it yourself. Do not use one of these programs to write because eventually it will catch up with you. And in all honesty, there's programs that are being used to detect it. And it's just a useful skill to be able to write and edit your own work. Write your paper, edit it, read your paper, as hard as it can be to hear your own voice or read your own writing. Read your paper and edit it, and then repeat this process as much as you can until you don't find very much left. Editing really is a practice of taking too much out and putting a little bit back in. You should be taking a lot out of the work that you write, crossing things out, deleting things. And then you read through it again and you say, it needs a little more information. Then, once you're finally ready, you can have AI do some menial things. It's kind of like a proofread. You can have your friends proofread. But the key concept here that I'm here to teach and kind of give to you is that you can really use AI as a research tool. Research is hard, and this is a way to really build those skills to where maybe you don't need AI in the future. I would say use it anyway, but build out your own research tools because you're going to need them in the future. So that is kind of this final piece here. This will be shared with your professor. So he'll upload it on Canvas, I assume. Yeah, I'm not that old. I did use Canvas too. And if you have any questions, file them with him. He'll send them over to me and I'll do my best to help out. But again, I would suggest playing with all these tools. Perplexity, ChatGPT. There's one called Claude, Claude. Google Gemini, Gemini. It's never the best speller. Or Meta's Llama, which I believe is just Llama. All of these tools are great, and they'll all help you do research, all help you do writing. And the important thing is that you learn these skills now. So when you go on in your future academic, collegiate, or professional careers, you can kind of replicate what I've done. I didn't have these when I was in college, but I've been able to really increase my output exponentially and become a much better professional and student because you never really stop being a student. You're always learning. So again, use these tools. It'll help you make your papers better, and you'll probably end up getting a better grade because of it. So that's all I have for you. The documents will be provided, hopefully on Canvas. How do I end this? There we go. Bye.